everyone and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Nicole and I'm a part-time reseller on Poshmark, and today I am going to talk about how May was for me in terms of sales and everything related to Poshmark. I'm going to take a look at my closet insights and do a deep dive on that, so if that is something that is interesting to you, definitely keep watching. And if you're also interested in seeing how any other month was this year for me so far, you could click that playlist that I have all these videos. I do one a month, and I just talk about the highs and the lows of every single month and how they were for me. So if that is something that is also interesting to you, you can click that playlist down below. But let's get right into May, because we had some crazy highs and it's just insane what happened. So you definitely want to keep watching to see that. So in the month of May, I made a total of $1,341 in sales, and I sold 58 listings. So this is way better than the previous couple months. As most of you have probably seen in my prior month's videos, I had talked about how I had dropped below $1,000 a month, and I was quite disappointed by that, but we are back. We have surpassed that this month, and we are just shy of where we were in January, which is even better. I'm just trying to get back up there as quickly as I can, so I'm very happy with that amount. And the number of sales was actually pretty on par with the prior months as well. But something crazy happened this month, and it was on the first day of the month, and so I was like, wow, we're in for a crazy month here. But on the first day of the month, I made probably $400 in sales, which is insane because that's never happened to me. And also it was the first day of the month, so it was like such a crazy way to start the month. So all things considered, that happening on the first day of the month really set the tone for this month and really made this month crazy and really made it a milestone month, because I had made my biggest sale ever, which was over $400, and I had made my most money earned in one day, which was over $400 as well. So with that being said, let's dive into the sales and everything else about this month. Okay, so in the month of May, the average for listings sold each day was like 1 to 2. Some days it was more. Actually, that first day of the month where I made that crazy sale, it was actually close to 8 listings sold because I made a bundle sale of 4 items. But on average, it was 1 to 2 per day, which is very on par with normal for me. There are days that are going to be higher and there's going to be days that are lower, but on average, it was 1 to 2 per day. And in terms of the average for orders, I think that was safer to say that that was close to 2 orders a day. Again, there was days where it was higher, and then there was also days where it was lower, but on average, we made about 2 sales a day. And there was a couple days where I didn't make any sales, which I've started to not let that bother me. Like, it used to bother me. If you remember back in March's video, I talked about how I only had 1 day with no sales, and so I was very ecstatic to have that happen. But I realized that I don't want to just keep making small sales to make a sale, so I'm okay with having a couple days where there's no sales if that is going to make those sales bigger. So having those no sale days is okay. But then having those sale days where I just generate a lot more sales is also very exciting. And if we compare this to the prior month we made, I think, $500 less overall. I think it was closer to $840 something. So compared to the prior month, we definitely made more money this month. And you can see in this graph that there's only 1 day that it really peaked higher, but overall this month was way higher in terms of sales. Okay, so some of my top selling brands for the month were actually some of those items that came from that bundle sale. That was my $400 sale on the first day of the month. So it's a little skewed just because those were designer purchases. So the first designer brand was a brand that I sold a pair of cowboy boots that I was actually selling for a friend. So I was very happy to get those sold. And then the other top selling brands after that are Michael Kors, Prada, Dooney & Burke, and then there's a couple other ones such as Fossil and some other brands. So most of those are designer brands, Prada, Michael Kors, and Dooney & Burke. And even Fossil's a pretty good brand too. So those all sold pretty high, and I actually sold a couple listings of each. A pair of Prada shoes that I've had for a couple years now, I was very happy to get rid of. And so basically those are my top selling brands for the month. They're top selling brands because their value is just higher overall. And then in terms of number of items sold, for most this month, Fabletics was actually the highest, which was kind of a shock because I normally don't sell that many Fabletics, but I guess I had sold a couple throughout the month, so I guess that makes it my top selling brand. The next brand was a men's pair of pants brand. I think it's Greg Norman. They're like golf pants. I sold a couple pairs of those, so that was the second most. And then American Eagle is shortly after that, which is normally one of my tops. So given that it's third place this month, just goes to show how off this month was in terms of it being a unique month where I sold different brands than I normally do sell. And then in terms of sales for the month, most of my sales came from women's items, a little bit came from men's, and then a very, very small amount came from kids. And then in terms of if my items were new with tag or not new with tag, about 75% were not new with tag and about 25% were new with tag. Okay, so now let's talk about how my sales came in. So 49% of my sales for the month came from offers, which is actually lower than it normally is. Normally it's closer to 2/3 or 3/4 of all my sales for the month. So I was actually pretty happy that that number was down a little bit compared to prior months. About 36% came from bundle offer, which is when a buyer will bundle and then they get a discount from the bundle, and then you could also send them a discount on top of that if you wanted to. So 36% of my sales came from that, which is pretty great. So 13% came from the buy now feature, and then about 1% came from the bundle and then buy now. So those numbers are typically lower for me. Sometimes I don't even have a bundle and buy now, so that was pretty happy. I was pretty happy that I had gotten that. But again, I really try to get those buy now numbers up every single month, and I think we're getting there over time. Okay, so let's talk about what items we listed this month. So I listed 308 items, which is very standard for me. I've listed about 300 and change every single month so far this year, and that is going to be something that I continue every month. And if you've watched my prior videos, you know that I try and list 10 items a day, 5 new items and 5 old items that have been relisted. I think this really helps to generate more sales, and I can't stress enough how important it is to be doing this. So that is why I have 300. If you do the math, that's 10 a day for 30 days in a month, gives you roughly that number. And this is pretty standard for every month for me, and that is how I really generate those consistent sales. So in terms of brands that I've added to my closet this month, I've added the most in the vintage category, the Coach category, American Eagle, and Francesca's. And so let's break that down. So vintage, I've added a lot of vintage items because I've actually been donated a lot from family and friends of vintage brands that were from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and their brands are not really that important enough to represent, so I just kind of put vintage, and that actually helps them sell better. A lot of those brands are Maggie Lawrence, Fashion Bug, and some other brands like that. I find that those items sell better if I just call them vintage. So that is why that category is the highest, because I've actually been donated a lot of items over the last couple months, and I'm sure it's going to continue to be that way as I get through those items. And then Coach, I added a bunch because I've had some items that I relisted that were Coach. And then American Eagle and Francesca's, I've had a bunch of items myself because I purged my closet when, the summer, when it was really starting to get warm out, and I've noticed that I wanted to get rid of a couple things that I was no longer wearing anymore. So a lot of those pieces came from my personal closet, and then I also had found some at the thrift store that I, still had to list. Okay, so far for the year, I've sold 303 items, and I've made a total of $5,696. So if we're going back to what I've said prior months, where I wanted to make about $1,000 a month, at the end of May, I should be at, $5,000, which I'm very happy that I'm over that. And I had 2 months that were over that, and then the other 3 months where I wasn't really carrying my weight too much. But I'm very happy that we're on track and that I'm going to be able to continue that going forward. And I hope that in the summer months, it doesn't slow down, because in prior months or in prior years, there's actually been a slowdown in the summertime. So I'm really hoping that that doesn't happen this year, and I can continue to stay on track with my goals for the year. And as you can see by this graph, May was my second best month this year, followed by February, and then March, then April. January was my best month by far. That has no comparison to the other months. And actually, typically that is the way it is. January always starts off really well for me, and then the rest of the months just start trickling down from there. But roughly on average, my listings sold each month really doesn't vary that much. It's more just what items I'm selling each month if I'm selling designer items. I know in January and also in May, I've sold a bunch of designer items, so that's why I actually made more money, because I was able to sell them higher. Where in February, March, and April, I felt like I wasn't really selling that many high-end designer items, which means that I'm going to sell roughly the same amount of items, but I'm going to make less money because I'm not able to sell them at such a higher cost. And roughly my number of orders was the same throughout each month, give or take a couple. The number was roughly the same. So here's where it gets interesting. So This year has been way better than last year for the first 5 months of the year, and I'm so excited to see how the rest of the year continues. But if you look at this graph, you can see that May, I was so much lower than I was this year in May of last year. And so that is really exciting. And to know that I've done better every single month thus far really goes to show something. And I think it's also crazy to think about because I feel like last year was a very slow year for me on Poshmark, which is weird because the year prior it was through the roof. But last year I felt like it was very slow, and to put this into consideration, I made roughly what I made so far this year in total in 2022. So I'm very excited to see that whatever I am doing this year and putting in so much more effort to make things work is working, and I'm really excited to see the progress and to know that all these changes that I've been making are really working and really helping me grow my business and make more money. Because if I can make what I made in a year in 5 months, then I can, continue and succeed in doing way better going forward, and that's what really excites me. So overall, that is a conclusion on how May was. Like I said, May was very exciting for me, especially on the first day of the month. I can tell you that I'm filming this a couple days into June. June has not been that exciting yet. Unfortunately, I don't think that's really going to be a occasion that happens often, but again, I was very excited that on the first day of the month I was able to make $462 in one day. And again, I don't sell on lives. I know a lot of people can make a lot more than I can when they sell on lives because they sit there for several hours and bring in a lot of money doing that. But for me, I don't do lives. It's not my forte. I don't like being in front of a camera. I don't like being live. And I really don't find that that is the best way for me to sell things. So taking lives out of it, for me to be able to sell $462 worth in one day, I was very excited and I was very happy that that happened. So this month has been crazy and fun, and I'm very excited to see what June looks like, and I'm very excited to keep going forward in the year and see how the overall year turns out for me. So if you like this series, like I said, you could definitely check out the other videos I've done on this series, and you could see the breakdown of each month so far this year. But if you want to see some more features that you should definitely be using on Poshmark that will help you generate more sales this year, you can click right here. And if you want to see a video on why your items aren't selling, maybe a couple reasons why your items aren't selling, I came across a bunch of listings the other day that were like crazy. I couldn't even believe my eyes, and so I made a video on it last week. So if you want to check that video out and you haven't already, you can click right here. But until next time, I will see you then.